This weekend, again, we're moving more into sort of the relationship between two people and integrating, focusing, and sort of just that experiential sensitivity into just being with someone and noticing different ways of listening, different ways of being with someone, different ways of staying in contact with yourself while listening to another person. So Frank and I wanted to have an interaction where Frank talks about something that matters to him and I will listen to him for 20 minutes, and then we'll have 30 minutes for any questions, comments, anything afterwards. So if you want to turn your cameras off, Frank and I will have 20 minutes, and then you're all welcome to come back. Hi, Frank.
Hello.
So I'll keep the time.
Mhm.
And I'll do it on my phone if that's okay with you. And so there'll be a little jingle kind of at the end, but I've turned it down, so I hope it's not too loud.
Fine. Yeah.
And do you want some notice period?
Yeah, a couple of minutes would be good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anything particular you want from me?
Um, no, whenever you want to take it, add in, I'm happy.
Okay.
I
So
imagine this is going to be quite conversational.
I was just going to say, from my point of view, I have no agenda. So if it's 20 minutes of you being silent with your eyes closed, that's fine with me.
Mhm.
If it's more conversational, that's fine with me. Whatever feels right as we go along.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds good.
Okay.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
So as I my attention in, I guess immediately aware of the kind of rising anticipation that kind of rises up this way.
Hmm.
And at the same time a kind of boom, something in the middle that is heavy and drops down.
Hmm. Yeah. So something rises up in anticipation, and at the same time, something else kind of goes boom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost like the anticipation is the thing that's trying to lift this heavier part out of itself or out of this place.
Yeah.
Mm.
So that's part of its rising up, maybe, is it's kind of trying to lift the other place up with it.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's not okay with it being boom.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think as I hear you say that, I immediately thought, yeah, there's to acknowledge what this anticipation is doing and demanding of this thing is already a bit of relief.
Yeah.
To acknowledge that
Yeah.
demand. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It already releases something
Mm.
just to be clear about what it's doing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I notice how nice it is to hear your voice saying it releases something.
Hmm. Yeah. Hearing it come back from me,
Mm-hmm.
that adds something to the
Mm.
whole process.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it feels exciting for me to hear that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I'm just aware of the heavy part, sort of almost kind of like walking itself out a little bit.
Mhm.
Um, and I have an idea of what it connects to, things going on in my life.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm kind of noticing that slightly heavier. It's almost like these heavier figures kind of walking themselves out a little bit.
Yeah. It's like they're kind of slowly emerging in their heaviness.
Mhm. Yeah, they don't have to lose their heaviness to. They can still keep their heaviness and be more than just there.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm.
And do you have some idea what it might connect to?
Yeah,
I'm wondering if you wanted to just check that out. You don't have to tell me, of course, but just see if it feels like that is it
mm-hmm.
in some way.
Yeah, yeah. As I do that, I kind of have a little bit of prickling at the back of the eyes, a little bit of
Yeah.
and a bit of a sense here. Um, and I know it's connected to a big decision, sort of life decision,
Okay. Yeah.
uh, and I kind of the heaviness of it walking out feels on one hand quite it sort of expresses the sort of seriousness of it,
Hmm.
um, and also yeah, I think the emotional part is that it's also it's a difficult decision.
Yeah.
um,
If I could just say that back to you the way I'm getting it,
mhm,
it's like there's really some weight to this decision. And some of the more feeling that comes, it's kind of honoring the fact that it's not an easy decision. It brings some, maybe some emotion.
mm, yeah, yeah. And as I hear you say that, I'm also I feel I could really the emotion feels very ready, like I could go into it, um, um, and has a little bit of a um, I think some upset in there about what's at stake, or
Yeah.
that I have to make a decision. Like
Yeah.
there's a few different sort of uncomforted aspects to it.
Hmm. Uncomforted.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like I know it's something I've talked about with a lot of people, and
Yeah.
but there's something about talking about it here now with you. I'm also aware of it has a um, uh, has a different kind of attending to it that it hasn't sort of particularly had,
Hmm.
like we're the way we're with it now. Or,
Yeah, exactly.
um,
Yeah, we're acknowledging that it's upsetting.
Yeah.
There really is some upset to
Hmm.
this, and almost like, wouldn't it be nice if you didn't have to make this decision?
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Or I didn't have to make it.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. Maybe somebody else could make this decision.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a lot about that.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. If only.
If only, yeah. Yeah. I, I'm noticing how the laughing we just had there about the upset, or the doing it myself, sort of changed the, like, um to change the energy in it a little bit, like, let's put a bit of blood, power into the feeling rather than the, I think
Okay.
it had a more of a sort of collapse.
Yeah.
When I started with the emotion, it had more of a, and I could probably still access that, but I noticed that in our interaction there was a different
Hmm.
sort of vigor or something that came out of it,
Hmm.
or with it somehow.
Hmm. Yeah. It's not kind of quite so slumped. It's more sort of, I'm tempted to say almost a little empowered somehow.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, or I'm feeling the power in it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now you can feel the power in it.
Mhm. In the upset.
Hmm. The upset has some power in it.
Mm-hmm. There's something moving about that, and I don't really know why.
Hmm.
But, yeah.
Yeah, me too. I can feels
Mhm.
alive somehow.
Don't quite know what the shift is, but there is a shift. Like, there is a feeling of something kind of more, and I noticed myself trying to go back to the place I was at. Um, yeah, but actually, it's sort of gone, and then there's a different kind of leveling, some sort of leveling out feeling that's here instead.
Mm-hmm. So maybe it would be okay just to stay with that, and maybe more will come from that leveling out,
Mhm.
sort of expanding or whatever it is.
Mhm. Yeah, I'll do that. It was almost like not what I thought it should do.
Yeah, yeah,
I'll stay with that
yeah,
invitation. Maybe
yeah,
it will connect me again more differently.
yeah. Just by staying with it, something might begin to stand out somehow.
Mhm. Mm. It's important to have my eyes open actually for somehow.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if this is a metaphor or what this is, but this leveling out has a quality of wanting to hold width, sort of breadth of a situation.
Okay. Yeah. It's like I'll say it this way and you can correct me. It's like the leveling out sort of allows you to hold the whole of it.
Hmm.
It really has that much breadth to it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I can feel that while not losing my experience in the middle of it.
Yes. Yeah. It's like the experience in the middle somehow belongs to this whole breadth.
Hmm. Hmm. Mm. Yeah, and with that, there's almost a kind of behind and underneath sort of playfulness that's also presenting itself. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, maybe that kind of aliveness that Carol was talking about, something of that.
Mhm. Something alive and playful is also a part of all this.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. It's nice to hear you say that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's nice to hear you say that. I can feel that there's something in this that isn't just weighty and difficult. It actually has some edge of
Mhm.
something playful,
Mm.
some energy, some aliveness.
Mhm.
I'm tempted to say some excitement, but I know you didn't say
Mhm.
that.
Yeah, I might just stop short of that one.
Okay.
But yeah, there is excitement within itself, maybe not within the feeling rather than within. Yeah, I can take there's excitement in there, but
Okay,
not the whole thing, not
yeah.
about. Mhm.
So let me say it back to you with that clarification. The situation itself isn't an exciting situation for you to be holding,
Mhm.
but within it, this feeling, it has a, for some reason, it has a kind of a subtle excitement in it.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, yeah, within the breadth,
Mm-hmm.
within the sharing of it as I'm sharing it here with you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm noticing I don't just want to um, be with the upset part of it,
Mm-hmm.
just feeling a desire to share the excitement within it, part of it with you. Also.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, at least between us,
Mhm.
it's nice to acknowledge it's not just the upset, there's also this little kind of excitement in it.
Mhm. Mhm.
We've still got another couple of minutes.
Mhm. Yeah, I guess what I'm with is a feeling of there's still this kind of down there sense,
Mhm.
but it has more of a it's less of a solid. It has more of a kind of open. It's more like a kind of the image that comes is like a lift shaft where there's a sort of burning heat that moves up. Like it has a different form of seriousness, but or weightedness, but it has a little more opening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm tempted to say it's almost like it has a channel now of some kind.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, some kind of opening.
yeah.
So I feel invested in just giving you a little guidance at the end, and I'm wondering how you'd feel about that.
Yeah, please.
Okay. So I'm just wanting to encourage you to take the time you need to just
Mhm.
acknowledge what's there now and seeing if it feels okay to let it settle or if there's anything else that needs to happen,
Mhm.
anything that needs to be acknowledged or anything.
Yeah, feels okay to leave it, but I appreciated that adding that final I noticed I could have skipped over something, gone, right, that's done.
Yeah.
Skipped. And even though neither of those suggestions, I didn't want to choose one or the other, I felt your invitation to not just leave it, it allowed it to sort of stay with its movement, or like it still feels like it's not just shut down.
Yeah. It appreciated just being checked with or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I guess you have a way of getting back to this some other time. Yeah. Okay. Does it feel okay to leave it there?
It does. Thanks,
okay.
Greg.
Terrific. Thank you.
Yeah.
So we wanted to take 15 minutes now to talk a little bit more explicitly about ending a session. This is, well, no, I was going to say this is mostly about sort of ending a guided focusing session or even a partnership session, but it could also apply to a therapeutic session or a part of a therapeutic session, maybe. So I guess the first thing, I'm going to talk for a few minutes and then open it up for any questions, or people might want to add other things I haven't mentioned. But we would like you in your triads to sort of experiment with this a bit. Unless the focuser, speaker, person really doesn't want it, that's absolutely fine, of course. But even if you don't really need it, you might allow your listener, guide, therapist, person to kind of offer it to you as a practice for them. So we're wanting you to make this a part of your practice when it's appropriate. The first question is like, what are we doing when we're trying to end a session? We have been spending some time with a process that has come alive in response to our attention and our listeners' attention. Sometimes we only have 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 50 minutes therapy session. Often when it comes to ending that time, there needs to be some sensitivity around it because the part that has been invited might still have more to say. It might not have come to a kind of a natural resting place, a kind of a stanza in music where it's like you take a breath and then the next round starts. It might not be at that kind of place. So we're inviting it to find that kind of a place. Often this starts to happen in the last couple of minutes, maybe the last 5 minutes, depending on sort of what the focuser wants, and maybe also depending on how evocative the session has been. If you're working with someone in a therapeutic session where the person is quite traumatized, you would spend an awful lot of time on this, not just the last 5 minutes. And you'd probably have all sorts of different ways of doing it. So this is just kind of the average, if there is such a thing, focusing process that we're talking about. So these are my suggestions. They aren't always going to be right or fit everyone. So they're only suggestions. The first thing is, if you have, for example, if you've given the focuser the warning time, there's 2 minutes left. From that point on, as the listener, you start behaving slightly differently. You don't keep reflecting back in the same way, because a reflection back often is partly to evoke more process. If you're in the last couple of minutes, you're not wanting to evoke more process, you're wanting the process to begin to settle. So you might sort of acknowledge things that are being said, but not reflect back or reflect back as often. Just to kind of let there be a lot more space. The focuser can say things, you might just go, mm-hmm. It begins to have a slightly different feel, which already signals to the body that it's coming to a place, a resting place. It's not a finishing place, of course, it's just a resting place. I would say that probably the first thing that can be very useful, and we saw it this morning, is as a listener, if it's okay with the focuser, or if you're guiding somebody, they won't know to ask for this or not. So I would say as a guide, I would almost always say this. Just check to see if it feels like there's anything else that needs to happen right now. It's not anything else that needs to happen, but just right now. Anything else that needs to happen now so that this place can begin to settle. That's why you're asking the question. Anything else it needs to know? Often at that point, the felt sense or the process needs to know that the focuser will come back. It wasn't that they waited 20 years to say something, they got 20 minutes and that's it. The process sometimes needs to know the person will come back, and after it knows that, it often settles. Sometimes just asking what is needed is enough to let it settle. Is it okay to let it settle? Just being asked that sometimes is enough. As a rule of thumb, it can be very useful to mark where it is in the body. So you can say that to the focuser. You might want to take a moment just to notice where it is in your body now, not where it was 10 minutes ago, but where it is in your body now. And you might want to see if there's an image, a gesture, a word, something that would just kind of fit the way it feels now. You're asking those two things. You're asking for a symbol and you're asking for the location, because often if you have those two things, you can very easily invite it back again. You know, a week later, a day later, an hour later. With those two things, you go back and you think, well, it was in my chest. Is it there now? And the word was frightening apprehension. So I say that to myself, I notice in my chest, and oh, there it is again. We don't assume it's going to just stay the same from the end of the session to the beginning of the next session. Usually there is at least some kind of background processing and maybe even some foreground processing in between. So when you go to find it again, it may not be exactly the same, but still the location and the symbol are very useful. Sometimes it feels right for the focuser to express some kind of gratitude, either to the part of them that came out and informed them, or to the process itself, or that they just had this time together with somebody listening. Some kind of gratitude sometimes helps the whole thing settle. Things I would say is, so maybe just give it a little bit of space. And then what I find myself saying for the last couple of years is maybe begin to gently move back into the whole person that you are. More than just any one part of you, no matter how important that place is. So there's this gradual expanding back into the whole being of the person, including this part. And it's okay if that felt sense is still there when they finish the session. You can carry it off into your life. It might be there for another hour or for another 2 minutes. But just checking to make sure that there's a respectful way to let the session come to a resting place, so that they would potentially, if it's a partnership, be ready then to pay attention to you and become a listener.